And we're live. This is episode 68 of They Talk Funny. My guest today is the fantabulous JJ Whitehead. JJ is originally from Canada, started comedy in the UK, and is now a writer for the Jefferies show. I'm just going to hide a little bit of my mess with the turn of the camera. Welcome, JJ.
Hey, buddy.
How you doing?
Hey,
we both
buddy.
had like
How
little
are you?
emergencies just before we went. I'm good. I am good. You're back in La La Land right now. Is that correct?
I am, yeah. And I'm trying to share this stream on Facebook right now. But it's weird when you're like, let's go live in 30 seconds. And I'm like, 30 seconds is enough for me to share something on and here I am 45 seconds later, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta fucking
and magically this is I've got one of my spotlights has just gone out again for the second time. Like I turned it on, sat down, it went out. I got up, I hit it, it went back on, and now it's out again.
We're smashing it. We're smashing it.
We are.
Man.
Welcome. We both had like these little emergencies before we started. We sort of just kind of discombobulated everything.
There you go.
We're from the same part of the world.
We are, and there's lots of interesting things. Like I've been saying, I don't know if you've seen my posts, but I've been saying you are one of the earliest adopters of my comedy, as I say, because basically in Halifax, a lot of people might not know this, but we didn't have a Yuk Yuks or anything. We had a guy called Paul Ash who was running a gig. I believe it was above a pub. Above a pub?
It was above a brew pub. It was also a brew pub. It was owned by the same people. It was just they were only open on certain days, and so they had a dark day that allowed us to do that.
Yeah,
that was Ginger's Tavern, which is a high-end steak place now.
Oh, really? But that's you, buddy. You were doing it when no Maritimer. It was like there was no comedy in Halifax, Nova Scotia, a place where the Halifax Yuk Yuks is so much fun these days. Lots of fun to play. But there was a lot of people don't know this. And comedy went away for a bit because there was comedy in Halifax, like at the Misty Moon or something, before us, before our, before we came along, before you came along, basically. That went away. It was a Misty Moon or whatever. That disappeared.
There was a Yuks that closed in the 80s, but that was like before.
Really?
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware of that one either. But basically, I knew you. I went to a couple of your shows that you ran, and then I went away to Britain, and I became a professional comedian. And then I came back and went, hey, can you put me on your show? I would say you probably booked me for maybe, I'm going to say my 25th show or something, probably. I had just been going for like a year in Britain, and I came home, and then you put me up. Yeah, and you put me on. It was like Christmas time or whatever. That's you.
Did you go up before you went over or not?
No, my first ever gig was in Scotland. My first ever gig was at the Stand Comedy Club in Scotland in like a July. Wow. Yeah, in like a July, and then I did comedy all July until December, and it was when I came home to Nova Scotia in December I gave you a call. I went, "Can I get on your stage?" I mean, I did well. I was pretty good.
I remember you coming in. Holy crap. But it's like that's how far afield Maritimers had to go to do comedy. Like there's a culture of comedy and storytelling in the East Coast. And I think that's why comedy clubs had a hard time. It's like, oh, we could go to the club or we could, sit in the kitchen and listen to Jack.
Yeah, there's a couple of having started in Britain, started my comedy. But there are places in Britain that are a bit like that. Like Liverpool is quite a funny place. They all think they're quite funny and cheeky, and so they're a tougher audience because they're like, I don't want to listen to your life stories. My mate can make me laugh down at the pub, So yeah, there's places like that, and no doubt Halifax was like that. It's also I just find Maritimers. We don't go out, do it. Maritimers love drinking more than going out. They'll prioritize the drinking part of going out, and if it happens, they'll forget about the going out. Oh yeah, we were supposed to go out.
Some of the liquor licenses they can serve until 4 a.m., which is like a lot of parts of Canada that's completely unheard of. And so, but the thing is, to drink in a pub, to drink in a bar is much more expensive. So we go. And we pre-drink.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Sometimes
and then it doesn't end.
Yeah.
Yeah. The pre-drinks never end. Sometimes you put your shoes on around 11 p.m. Sometimes you put your shoes on around 11 p.m. You go, all right, let's go to the bar then. And then one of your mates starts being funny and you forget. And then you're wearing your shoes in the living room. And then you sit down and you keep drinking and you never go to the bar. That's generally the way it can transpire in Nova Scotia. So yeah, man. So yeah, on behalf of all the, on behalf of the last 3 generations of comedians, yeah, I will say thank you, Paul Ash, for running that little gig and for giving people of Halifax, like people like me, an idea of like, oh, there's a thing out there called stand-up comedy that's more than just what I watched on TV. And that, because that, you need that growing up. And if people don't have that, then they're, not inspired. And then I was lucky enough when I moved to Scotland to go to the Stand Comedy Club on my second night with everybody from my hostel. You make your new friends at the hostel. And I went to the Stand Comedy Club, which is a class venue. And that's when I realized, oh, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to do for a living. Yeah.
Brilliant. Wow. And that just made my light come back on. I'm getting all verklempt over here.
I'm giving you the light energy, buddy.
The light energy is just the light is shining on me here. And okay, your career. Let's just so you sort of started touring the UK. You moved in with some roommates. You ended up doing the festivals in Australia. You toured most of the world. You were basically a UK based comic for a good long while, even though you were Canadian.
Yeah, I counted as 15 years. I've been doing this for 21 years, and this is my 6th year here in Los Angeles. So I did 15 in the UK, 2 years in Edinburgh, 2 years in Edinburgh, 3 years in London, then another 3 years in Manchester, and then the rest of the time back in London again. But yes, all with comedians. All comedians will know this. That's one of the great perks of becoming a comedian or an amateur comedian is living in a clown house, isn't it? You live with these comedians. So yeah, quite simply, I started kind of as a student. I lived on the student grounds in Edinburgh, and all of my roommates were all students. And then I started in stand-up comedy. And then after about 2 years, me and 2 other comedians named Dougie Dunlop and James Dowdeswell. Oh, and Alan Miller, 3 of us. Sorry, they swapped out rooms every now and then. We all moved to London together. And so that was London. And then London evolved to being me and Dougie Dunlop, Scottish comedian, who's great. And then Jim Jefferies and Steve Hughes. And then together, me and Jim Jefferies and Steve Hughes, then we moved to Manchester because we just found London expensive. And it was one of the best things we could have done for our career. So then we moved to Manchester. We took over Manchester. We started doing the Comedy Store in Manchester like regularly. And they had a current events night as well. So they had where you read the newspapers and you make fun of current events. It was called Men at Work. And me and Jim Jefferies and Steve Hughes, we got straight stuck into that. We were like doing that every week. And that just helped us. Manchester was one of the best moves we ever could have made. And then a few years later, we moved back to London.
I was not aware of that. I knew that you Steve Hughes and Jim Jefferies were living together for a good while. I had no idea about this the Men at Work like this that task writing. Like, did you get the papers fresh so it was sort of like a writer's room, or did you peruse them ahead of time so you could?
Oh yeah, no, it was very much like so they ran this Men at Work. They ran it. There was a Leeds Comedy Store as well. For those who don't know, Leeds is probably about 45 to an hour outside of Manchester. So yeah, depending on when you're doing it, show up early to the Comedy Store, get dinner, and then sit there with the newspapers and then shoot the shit with each other, because there's 4 of us on stage for Men at Work. There used to be 4 of us sitting on stools and then just going, this happened, and then making fun of it or whatever. So that was like, a lot of comedy clubs, I assume, still do that, or definitely in Britain. I don't know if they mix it up, but in Britain, you've got the Gong Show. The Gong Show is on Sunday nights in Britain. Men at Work used to be at like Wednesday nights. There's an Improv show, I think, which is Monday nights, and then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday is the best of stand-up comedy.
The Comedy Nest in Montreal, which is the only full-time comedy club that we have. Straight Out of Montreal is trying to run multiple nights across several different venues, but the Comedy Nest is the only like brick and mortar style comedy club that is in Montreal.
Right.
and we're still they're still sort of regrowing their nights, but they have their newbie Tuesdays, which is new material night. Then they have their comedy lab Wednesday night.
They call their new material night newbie Tuesday, because that to me sounds like it would be new comics. But
it's a combination. It's you bring your new material, but you also there's a lot of new comics because of all their material is new at that point. So
yeah, fair point. But yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'll tell you what else about the Stand. So when I first moved to Scotland, the Stand did a cool thing where they did improv at lunch, which was wild. Which brought in and I saw the evolution of that while I was there too, because I saw them do the improv at first. And it wasn't that busy, but in my time over Scotland, I saw people know that they can come here for lunch and watch. It was all just two guys. It was a double act improv guys, but they would crush it every lunch, and it would bring a good 15, 20 people in to have a sandwich and a coffee or whatever and watch the. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. Comedy isn't just for 10 p.m. onwards. Yep. It's there's all kinds of different types that you can put up. So I found that really interesting too, and I've never seen that again here. I've never seen any comedy club here go, yeah, at lunchtimes we do improv.
In Toronto, there was a lunchtime improv that I remember back in the late 90s, I think it was. Right. I never stepped into it because it wasn't a comedy venue, but there was a space in the underground city of Toronto, and I remember seeing it advertised.
Maybe because improv was so huge in the night. Maybe it doesn't work these days. Maybe it's like they used to come for lunch, and now every comedy club has two guys improvising from 12 to 1 in the afternoon with nobody watching anymore.
All right, before we start trashing improv, how would you describe your comedy style? Like, because you jumped in with 2 feet and you just hit the ground running.
Yeah, I guess I'm anecdotal, anecdotal and affable. That's another thing. I'm not mean. I never did the mean thing.
Yeah.
So I was always quite good with hecklers and stuff because they always seemed like the mean ones, while I just played the naive. Played the naive Canadian for most of my career, and just being nice and, hey, what's going on, and why do you guys do this? And what's a pasty? Oh, a pasty. Oh, I see. So that's it. But I liked storytelling, and anecdotal comedy was always my bag. And that's, you can blame that on like Eddie Murphy and Billy Connolly.
Yeah.
And so
yeah. You had the benefit sort of the fish out of water, which made you something new and exotic for the audiences in the UK. Even though you were, I'm gonna be a little bit mean here. I'm gonna mention the fact that you were a blonde guy with dreads for.
I did.
Your first cover, your first
you think
magazine
that's mean?
Cover.
You think saying what you see is mean? I don't. If you tried to bring me up on cultural appropriation or something, then that would be mean. Which has happened. I've had people try to point out he had dreadlocks. He should pay for. I'm like, I don't. It's just a hair. It was, to me, it was rebellion. It was a rebellious hairstyle. It wasn't religious or anything like, or mocking. I wasn't trying to mock. I don't understand that thought process. Yeah. I was trying to mock people with dreadlocks by having. How ridiculous is that?
I'm going to modify my look to make fun of someone else. Yeah.
That's why sometimes I don't understand the cultural appropriation finger wagging before. But yeah, that happened. There was a complaint against me before because somebody uncovered dreadlock photos and tried to get me in trouble with my
in your press packet
job,
or something.
They're all out there, and also it was just rock and roll. I just wanted to be a rock and roll comic, so whatever.
I want to say hi to anyone that's watching. If anyone has any questions for Jason, just bring them on. For JJ, bring them on. Enter them into the chat. We'll bring them up on screen.
See, you said Jason there because you know, because we go that far back that you're like, I knew him when he was Jason John Whitehead. Yeah,
JJ is just it's so much easier, but it makes me think of Spider-Man. I'm sorry, it's just the nerd.
Oh yeah, yeah. It makes me think of Abrams.
Oh, Abrams. Just I don't think I have with my light going out here. Here's the lens flare not working.
There you go. Very Star Trekian.
Very Star Trekian.
I was going to say, I enjoyed the Jason John Whitehead years, but in Britain it was always easy. But when I started coming to America, they do love a passive aggressive fucking up your name thing. You're like, there's a different attitude, I think. Like British comedy is I don't know, it's socialized, right? It's like everybody gets paid. Like if you play the Comedy Store in Britain, everybody gets £200, all 5 of you. Whoever opens, whoever hosts, whoever goes on second before the break, whoever goes on first after the break, and whoever closes the show, you all get paid the same. The bonus is if you close the show, you can probably do an extra 10 minutes or 20 minutes. That's the bonus. Whereas you move to America, and I thought, oh, right, you don't. Only the headliner gets the money, and everybody else is still fighting for scraps, and it creates this kind of competitive thing that's, I don't know. I find it toxic, but that's because I came up through the British system and we were all happy. And, we left the art to the stage instead of this, like, you're going to take a job from me kind of thing. So that's why JJ became an easy choice when I moved to America, because they were always going, this next guy, apparently he works, I guess, in Europe. And it's, here's James Jonathan, and I'm just like, oh, fuck off. I know what you're doing. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist in Britain. I remember there were comics in Britain that would wrap the mic around the stand, when you're coming up, so that you had to stand there and, possibly get uncomfortable while you're trying to. So, I mean, there's a lot of dicks in our industry, isn't there? There's a lot of
dicks everywhere. There's a lot of dicks everywhere. I never knew that about the socialized pay structure. I knew about the time that the headlining set in the UK is like 20-25 minutes, unless you're doing like a one person show.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is you'll notice right away, there's less jokes about their day jobs. British comedians aren't doing jokes about or even like that. There's that old Louis C.K. bit about how I had $0 in my bank account, and then the bank took $5 away from me or whatever. Everybody's got jokes about their day jobs. There's comics here in LA, and they work at Trader Joe's. They're talking about, I was doing my shift at Trader Joe's. You won't see that in Britain, because everybody's happy. And even on the beginner rung of stand-up comedy, they're making enough money that they don't, I mean, it's still beginner rung, but they're making enough that they don't need to do a minimum wage day job, which is nice and unlike America.
Now, what was the plan when you went to the UK? Like, did you go thinking, I'll do comedy? It doesn't sound like you did. You went there for school?
Yeah, well, so I had I was kind of doing a gap year. I was doing journalism, photojournalism. So I graduated from Dalhousie. Then I won this, I wanted to travel anyway. I wanted to go, around the world and stuff like that. And I worked in South Carolina for Marriott. That was the end of my degree. And then I was running activities. I actually ran stuff like dolphin tours and stuff like this down in Hilton Island for my last semester of my degree, which health degree. And then I took photojournalism, and I was going to go to Ryerson in Toronto. My secret motivation was to go take photojournalism at Ryerson in Toronto and start doing stand-up comedy at night, because it was the only way I could figure to get to Toronto. I was like, how do I get to Toronto? Because that's obviously where I can't be doing it in Halifax, where there's not enough. So I was just thinking, how do I get to the big city? And then luckily enough, I take that little gap. I won a photojournalism kind of bursary to do photos of the Edinburgh Castle. And then I did the City of Dundee tour guide, the City of Discovery. So I did photography for them, for their city tour guides and stuff. And I was there just to travel around Scotland. But on the second night that I was in Edinburgh, like I said, I was staying at a hostel, and we went to the Stand Comedy Club. I saw Frankie Boyle. Who at the time was closing on a Chewbacca impression. And for anybody who doesn't know, Frankie Boyle is one of the edgiest, best comics around right now. Thoroughly. He's top 5 in the world right now, Frankie Boyle, even though he doesn't make a lot of lists in America. But he's an amazing, amazing comedian. And he doesn't pull any punches. He doesn't suffer any fools. But I guarantee you, he won't be doing anything like a Chewbacca impersonation. He'll be more, political and edgy. But yeah, so I saw that second night. Then the host came up and said, "Does anybody want to try this?" come and let us know. And I did. I went down the next day and I told him. And then I just decided, I was at the hostel and I was just like, shit, yeah, I'm going to do this. This is while I'm doing my little adventure abroad year. I'm also going to do stand-up comedy. I'm going to do stand-up comedianing. And then and see where it goes. And I mean, the other advantage is, because I was thinking, like, because if I fail, then nobody ever needs to know. If I suck at this, then I sucked at it in Edinburgh, Scotland, and then I can go home and pretend it's not anything I ever had an interest in, you know. But luckily it went better.
And now everybody knows.
Everybody knows what
that you did comedy, like you didn't suck, right? Like if survived. Nobody would know if you had sucked. Now that.
Now everybody knows that I suck. Now,
no. Now everybody knows you did it because you didn't suck.
Yeah, totally. It was amazing. It was that feeling when you know that you have a dream, you know, your whole life. I remember it. I remember that feeling where you know you have this dream, and you know you've thought about being a stand-up comedian like ever since I saw Eddie Murphy when I was 12 years old or whatever, like just a little shit. And me and another friend, we had to sneak his sister's copy of Delirious, you know, and we're sitting there and we weren't allowed to watch, like, but so ever since then I had that dream. And then, I mean, everybody knows that feeling. If you got something you want really bad and you want to do it really bad, and that feeling in my gut of like, all right, I'm about to find out if I can do this or not. And there's a distinct possibility that I can't do this, because 99% of people who try this do fail. So, and then luckily I walked away from that first gig going, I think I can do this. This is going to be okay. You know?
Now, one thing about the UK is there's a lot more turnover in material. Is there? They're not among comedians. Among successful comedians there generally are, but in the UK, because it's longer form comedy in a lot of ways, because everybody's gearing up for Edinburgh. So the Edinburgh Festival, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is a lot of comedians' like annual milestone. You know, I think for some it's a biannual or every 2 years milestone. I did a bit of both. Sometimes I did it every year, and then sometimes I would take a year off. I would say in my 15, like I've done 16 Edinburghs. I've done comedy 21 years and I've done 16 Edinburghs. So I took a year off here and there. But basically, yes, because every comedian is planning a long-form narrative story, you know, for Edinburgh, or, you know, so you end up turning over material more because it ends up being you know, longer threads and stuff like that. You can't, it's unless you're like, there are pun comics or one-liner comics, you know, like the Tim Vines and the Gary Delaney's and stuff, and they must churn it out because every joke for them is only 30 seconds. So that must be harder. Whereas me, I would just have something would happen and I'm like, oh, I want to talk about our trip to Disneyland when my buddy broke his foot, you know, and I'll go, there he goes. There's 7 minutes. So that's it. So it's just a different style, isn't it? 7 minutes with some one-liners and jokes in it. But that's because we're all planning for an hour-long show in Edinburgh, you know, and so yeah, you gotta turn it over every year. You gotta get new stories. Gotta get 7 new stories every year in my case. Yeah. What was your writing discipline like starting out compared to maybe in your 5th year?
Oh, of Edinburgh. I don't know. I mean, I guess when you start out, when I started out, I don't think I wrote down stuff as much. I think I'd have the idea and go and do it. And so it wasn't until you get some more experience under your belt that I really started to deconstruct it and go, I'm going to write this out. Or actually, you know what? Your first TV appearance. I remember that was a lesson for me, because my first ever TV show that I booked, they asked me, like on the day, they asked me to send them the script. And I was like, what? And they go, yeah, can you send us the script? It was for the BBC stand-up show. And I, with Tommy Tiernan, and then, and they were like, can we see your script? And that blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, I better find a computer and type up a script, because I'm not ready for a script. And, you know, so yeah, so that was my first lesson of writing it out. And then even then, when I wrote that, when I started typing it out for them, then I noticed nuances. You notice little rhythms or something in what you're and that's when I realized, oh, this is a good lesson to improve these bits. So honestly, up until that point, up until the first time I was asked to put my stand up in written form, I would just go up and do it, you know, like basically my set list, I think when I started out was, I'm going to talk about being from Canada, I'm going to talk about drinking with the British, I'm going to talk about the Spice Girls, I'm going to talk about Avril Lavigne, and then I'm going to talk about the post office here in Britain. That was basically out of the gate shit, and none of it was ever written down. So, but now I have, I mean, shit, you can see. Now I storyboard it so that I can look at it. Those are all bullet points all there. Blue is my old material, white is my new material. So basically I'm currently trying, if you see those cards at the back there, I'm currently trying it, and it starts up here. So that's my opener, which is the lion. I'm doing a joke about Tiger King. And then I try to go, so the idea is if the gig's going well, I go all this new material, white, new. And then I'll go over that way. But these blue ones are here because if it doesn't go so well up here, then I'm straight onto the blue stuff. So straight onto, all right, safety zone.
That safety zone, which is brilliant. How many boxes of index cards do you have? Just out of curiosity, or do you keep them in just stacks?
Yeah, all ready to go. This is actually my favorite system of doing things now is having, instead of a book, like I got some books, I got some of my writing books on the shelf there, but I've been finding, like, just when an idea comes to you, having these by my computer or whatever and being able to write it down is a very good way. And also when you're flipping through them, it helps too. I find it more efficient than a book. I still use the books though. But.
And it's also to help rearrange, I guess. I mean,
Yeah, so you change running orders and stuff like that, or find different things that blend together.
Do you the tactile of actually writing with a pen makes a big difference for you?
Yes, yeah, very much. I'm I'm aware that the new generation they go up and they put their iPhones on a stool, don't they? That's generally the move. They go up. I'm trying to find my notes from this week. So yeah, they generally go up, put their iPhone down on the stool, and then they stand over it scrolling with their fingers, don't they? They go, not that one, not that one, not that one. And then I go up with oh shoot, I misplaced it. But anyway, I just go up with paper still. I go up and I go, here's my jokes, and I slap that on the stool. So I still do that style. Oh, I know where it is. But
how long after that first TV bit did you do your first album? How many albums again? It's 4.
I got 4 albums.
4.
Yeah, and my first one was about 2007, I would say. I think I did Comedy Now in Canada. I did a Comedy Now in Canada and returned to Britain and recorded my first full-length album kind of in the same window of time, which was really exciting. I'd been going for 7 years at that point, I would say, 2007. And all of a sudden, 2 markets, man. All of us, like I knew when I was home, I would do Yuk Yuks, you know, and of course I'm touring Britain and I was playing Australia and New Zealand at the time as well. So I was working everywhere, but I didn't have... You know, I don't know. It's just a big moment when I'm like, all of a sudden I've got a Comedy Now in Canada and I've got my first ever album with the Comedy Store back in the UK. So that was a pretty cool, like, moment. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I know I'm a professional comedian, but now I've got that. And I don't know. And that's the other thing too. Not many comics. Well, I mean, there's not many Canadian comics anyway. We're not a big country or whatever, but comedy wise, but yeah, so it was big. There's not a lot of people who do that. I bet you still now there's probably very few people who did a Comedy Now and did a British comedy album at the same time. Anyway.
True. I mean, per capita in the US, the amount of like successful working Canadian comics
Yeah.
is skews, I think, a little bit higher.
Oh,
But
yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that we're not good. Canadian comics are very good. I think Canadian comics are the best. I just mean there's not. I would say there's probably in existence people who call themselves comedians. There's probably more, Scottish, British, English, Aussie, and then definitely Americans.
By population, that's kind of the way.
Yeah. So we're rare in that sense.
Would you say touring Australia is similar to touring Canada?
I guess in that it's long distances, but I never once got caught in the snow in Australia. So, but I mean, distance wise, being patient, having to take puddle jumpers, little puddle jumper planes to go somewhere. Yeah, there is a vibe of that because actually the Jim Jefferies tour, I don't know, I've done 6 tours with him now, I think, but I would say maybe the 3rd tour or whatever, we went to Nova Scotia. We went to, which I was so angry because I really wanted to show him a good time in the Maritimes. And we had Moncton, St. John, Halifax, and St. John's. Right? So we had 2 shows in New Brunswick, 1 show in Nova Scotia, and 1 show in Newfoundland. Now, the way that they did the flights, so we flew in, we did the first show in New Brunswick. Then we had to get a puddle jumper. So it was a whole travel day, get a puddle jumper over to Halifax. We did Halifax. And then we went from Halifax to Newfoundland and did Newfoundland. And then we went from Newfoundland back to New Brunswick to do Moncton or whatever. And it was a nightmare. And I was like, this is so annoying because Jim was miserable. Jim's like, what the fuck is this place? Everything's so he didn't enjoy the Maritimes because he everything's so spread out. And I was like, dude, we could have done this in 2 flights. We should have been able to do this. But it's because back in Los Angeles, you've got like a management company or whatever back in Los Angeles just looking at the Maritimes on a map, and they just think, whatever. Yeah, Moncton to Halifax, Halifax to Newfoundland. That's gravy. And you're just like, fuck, we should have done Moncton and St. John back to back, and then short little drive to Halifax, or a flight to Halifax, and then a flight to Newfoundland, and then home from back to Los Angeles. Anyway, that happens a lot on the road, so that's a bit annoying. And yes, I think Australia was a bit like that as well, where you're getting little tiny 6-seater planes to go to the interior of Australia or whatever, and you're getting thrown around by God while you're trying to fly through the sky. So touring big countries sucks.
You also mentioned in comparison to the UK, where both of you really cut your teeth and really developed. You had the Manchester Comedy Store, and then an hour away was the Leeds Comedy Store. Yeah,
that's 35 minutes away is Warrington, which is a huge city as well, and then Liverpool is another 25. So Leeds, Liverpool, and Manchester are all within 2 hours of each other. So there's 3 weekends of work too, and then you got Warrington, you got all these other Oldham, you got So it's crazy working as a comic in Britain. You can get on stage every night if you want, because there's multiple. I don't even know how. Our biggest cities are what? Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, and Calgary. I'm gonna guess right offhand, but Britain has so many cities that are over 1 million in population. Edinburgh, Glasgow, Newcastle, Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, just fucking everywhere, man.
Even they're Montreal, all if you take a look at Montreal and how many people are English first, as their first language, it's a small town. It's less than 1 million. It's less than 500,000. I
really
say.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's good that they're good comedy fans then, because I imagine the rooms are still busy. But that's really good in a smaller city. It's crazy. Population I didn't even say London, but London as well, obviously, is huge, and has London alone has at least 20 proper comedy clubs and probably 50 to 60 comedy, above a pub kind of situations. So yeah, you can work like crazy. Young comics ask me about Britain, and I say do it. I would always say do it, especially if you're Canadian. If you're Canadian and you can get that Commonwealth, because my deal was if you're under 24, so back in the day, and I think it still might be the same. Maybe it's under 26 or something now. I don't know, but the reason why I started was because if you were under 24, you got a 2-year work visa for anywhere in the Commonwealth. So that's what landed me in Scotland, and I recommend it to all young comics now and I recommend Manchester is where I recommend because it's cheaper, it's more affordable to live, and it's got shitloads of gigs all around it, including those major cities and stuff. And that was my recommendation to people.
Manchester was known as a bit of a rougher town, sort of like Hamilton in Canada, but it's also seems to have the description of being a very arts town as well because of the young people, people who go there to survive on art.
And the BBC just moved there. BBC moved there. I'm gonna say 8 years ago or something. So the BBC used to be in West. It used to be in West London, in White City or whatever in West London, and it's moved to Salford, which is they call Salford a different city than Manchester, but it's basically inside Manchester. It's like it's like I don't know. It's like I can't think of a really good example, but it's like saying that downtown Halifax is separate from Halifax or something,
Right.
But it's called Salford. I always tell them they're a very smart city, which they always look at me baffled because they know Manchester's not a smart city. But I always go, Manchester, you're a smart city because you cut your crime rate in half by calling Salford a different city, and it's right there. But that's basically the BBC moved to Salford, and the BBC has taken over Salford. So if I was a young comic now living in Manchester, I would probably be networking a lot at the BBC in Salford and trying to, get a show made or whatever. So it's Manchester's a great place for comedy.
Boom. I found out about the Commonwealth visa, I think 2 years after I was eligible.
Right. Yeah, that happens too, doesn't it? But I think they've expanded the rules and stuff like that. But yeah, I highly recommend it. It also teaches you like doing comedy in a different market. I mean, yes, you get that spoiled advantage of maybe seeming exotic for a few. You still have to be funny, but you got like, ooh, he's got a different accent or whatever. But also, it just teaches you to get rid of the lazy kind of shit and actually start to observe the culture that you're in, or make observations of your fish out of water place, instead of going Tim Hortons, or whatever, whatever spot we find ourselves in.
Yeah. It's what's the shit town here? All right. There's
yeah.
Now you actually are working as a professional writer as well as being a comedian at this point.
Yep. Which was awesome. I think it was my favorite. It's so weird. Like I loved traveling the world and telling jokes, and but I absolutely adored the last 4 years of my career where I got to write television, which is great. I mean, that's part of the dream, isn't it? I mean, I'd love to star on TV. But the next level down is seeing your jokes. Like I put the jokes in Jim. Well, if I write a good joke that makes the TV show, I'm not gonna say I put all Jim Jefferies. Jim Jefferies is just a funny fucker. Okay, yes. So Jim Jefferies can make anything funny. So it makes your job as a TV writer a little bit easier when you go, hey, why don't you? Like the times that even if I churn out 10 jokes and I only think that 7 or 8 of them are good. And I'll be looking at the really shitty one that I did as filler, and then Jim will do the shitty one and make it seem like a fucking great joke. So some people are easy to write for. But anyway, that was a dream. I'm here in Hollywood, and there's my bike's right there, and I actually biked to the studio every day in the sunshine. It's fucking insane, isn't it? It's insane. I lived in Britain for 15 years. I was saying this too. I lived in Britain for 15 years as a stand-up comic, and I loved it and everything, but I owned one pair of shorts. The British will tell you this. I only needed one pair of shorts, which was if I occasionally went to a public pool or maybe had a workout. One pair of shorts. It's all you need for 15 years in Britain. And now I'm here in Los Angeles and I have like 6 pairs of shorts. I need 2 hands to count the shorts, man. and then this bike, because I I realized, so my studio, my studio is in East Hollywood, or sorry, I'm in East Hollywood and the studio was in West Hollywood, and it was 30 minutes drive or 14 minutes bike. So I was like, all right. So I just used to grab this puppy every morning, bike down, write jokes for the day, and bike back home. It was like, I miss it. I miss it a lot. It was friggin' awesome. And that makes you, I don't sure where this too, but Hollywood, of course, Hollywood is a showcase town, right? So a lot of the stand-up comedy gigs at night, they don't pay. Right. They don't pay at all. You're just there. It's that age old. I mean, I know promoters use this excuse all around the world. They all go, but I can't pay you, but you might get discovered, or I can't pay you, but you love to do this and you're honing your craft and you never know who's in the audience, all that shit. That they do that in LA 100%. It's all because it's just a showcase town, and so you're working for free. But when you're writing a television show during the day and you're getting paid for that, you actually are in such a great mindset that you don't mind doing your passion of stand-up comedy for free at night. You're like, fine, like on aggregate, I can do this. So it takes the sting out of doing your job for free at night a little bit. But it's a showcase town.
It's a showcase town. Did writing for the TV show, did that change your methodology in writing at all?
Yeah.
Like, how?
Yeah. Well, you gotta. I mean, it made me write a few. I wasn't a political comic. If I did political jokes, they would be easy ones. Like up until that point. Like I remember. Yeah, and they weren't even really political. I used to talk about like living in Europe, about how Americans didn't want sex on television, but loved violence. And then I used to talk about how it's the opposite here in Europe, where French people are like, "Oh my God, violence is terrible," and then sex. So that's not political, but that was one of those observations that I make. But then all of a sudden I move here, and we were writing a political comedy show. So yes, my notebooks got full of whatever jokes about whatever social issue or political issue is. I mean, the Jim Jefferies show started like a couple weeks after Donald Trump got the presidency. That whole pilot had to be rewritten. The pilot all had Hillary being like, nobody saw it. The whole Jim Jefferies was like, everything got quite twisted and turned upside down after that. And that's weird too. That makes me feel weird too. Like the Jim Jefferies show, unfortunately only existed during Donald Trump's presidency. Like, so if you look back on our show now, you're like, wow, they really hated Donald Trump for those 4 years. We're like, well, that was the only 4 years we had to work with. So what a weird time. I really, but there's no way around it. I fucking miss it. And I think that's like the dream. That's like was coming so close to the dream. If we could have just kept going,
and it was still like a writer's room situation, a lot like the Men at Work nights at the Comedy Store.
Yeah, a little bit. There was 8 of us total with a head writer. So, but the Men at Work. So Men at Work was 4 comedians, doing it, and we used to just meet for dinner and then talk about what we want to talk about. And also, being comedians, we all had honed bits too that we could recycle, or whatever. Tony Blair's in the news again. You know what I think of Tony Blair, right? Like, and that would happen every week. Whereas the writer's room at the Jim Jefferies show, I would say was half comedians and then half comedy industry. They came up through like improv or the UCB like writing classes or whatever. So that was that was a funny dynamic because I've just found like they have a different mindset. I think stand-up comedians are more cutting, I think, and maybe the people that come from writing school are more polished or whatever. They see it differently, and so that writer's room was different. And plus, it was a television show instead of just a Men at Work stage show. So it being a television show, we would have to be writing the whole week. It's a full week process with multiple scripts and multiple rewrites. right up to the last minute, right up until we've recorded on Tuesdays. And our last rewrite, we recorded on Tuesdays at 12:30 at lunchtime. So even though it airs at night, but that recording at lunchtime gives us time to edit it for the New York audience. So we could get it edited and get it to Comedy Central in New York in time to go on the air at 8 p.m. New York time. But yes, our last rewrite would be 11 a.m., like an hour from showtime, so. Yeah.
So the heavy deadlines. This past, are we saying 18 months? Of what has been happening in the world? What's been happening in the U.S.? What, shitty joke?
Shit show.
Okay. I thought you were thinking God just played a shitty joke on us for the past 18 months.
He kind of did, didn't he?
Yeah. What has been your take of what has happened, like politically, social, economically, socially, like the contract between other human beings?
It's weird getting old, isn't it? Like you forget how fragile things are sometimes. Like I will honestly say the first time I was really shocked at, I don't know how to quite word it right, but let's say this is true though, in the 2000s, the British comedy circuit was so amazing, so we had the Comedy Stores, we had the Glee Clubs, we had so many brands of comedy. In Canada there's Yuk Yuks and I think one or two other like
Absolute, and then
Absolute
the Laugh Stop is
right, like maybe trying to grow or whatever. And whereas in Britain there was at least 5 or 6 brands that had more than 4 venues, being the Comedy Store and Jongleurs and Glee Clubs, and then there was a whole bunch of little side ones. It was just it was crazy. But Jongleurs was the dominant one, and like I would say 50% of my work was 50% of a comedian's work was at a Jongleurs comedy club, because I think there was 23 Jongleurs in all of Britain. So there was one in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Newcastle, Nottingham, like you name it, they all had Jongleurs. And out of nowhere, in what I don't know the exact year, but it just happened out of nowhere. I'm gonna say 2009, but I'm not sure. But out of nowhere, Jongleurs, boom, bankrupt, gone. So all these clubs just went away, and it went from healthy and thriving to nothing. It went from audiences of 300 people, to boom, zero, not existing. And then it got bought by a company. It became like something called Highlight or something. But all that. But I remember that me going like, oh my God, that the world is. I thought this is my world. I'm a professional comedian, and I got all this work, and Jongleurs was a big part of it. And then that's gone overnight. You didn't even see it coming. There was no way you could conceive how this comedy club that's packed night after night. Anyway, so that was the first time I remember everything just going away. And then I'm calling up clubs that I hadn't done in 2 years going, hey, could really use some work right now. And anyway, this is the same. It felt the same. I mean, this is a global pandemic where people are dying and everything, but it felt the same way work-wise. It felt like, here we go. I'm on tour with Jim. Things are happening. We got our TV show. We got all this shit. And then the shit hits the fan and everything's gone. It's all gone. We're not touring. We're not doing nothing. You got to make lateral moves and just try to survive, and that, and I'm like, I've started several I started a podcast during the pandemic. I do a podcast with Francisco Ramos.
What's that called?
It's called Stand By.
Okay.
And he and I, but same thing. We were like, so we started. It's about travel. Basically, we want to talk to artists who travel for their art. We talk about travel in the arts with artists who travel for their art, is what we say. So that was the deal. So we did that to keep ourselves busy. We just got picked up by the Comedy Store here, so we've done 2 of those at the Comedy Store now. But that is something that 10 years ago, like 10 or 11 years, I was offered a radio show 10 or 11 years ago, and I said no. I didn't want to do any of those things. I didn't want a podcast or radio show or any of that shit. I was a live comedian, which I think a lot of us felt that way. And now it took a pandemic for me to go, oh, okay, maybe we'll have to start a podcast. And now I'm on Twitch as well. So I'm broadcasting live, like trying to build an audience on Twitch. right now, because I think for me that seems like a medium that's going to be around for the next 20 years. So I can picture myself being I can picture the audience of Twitch growing up to be like 30 or whatever, like if they're currently 20, and they're probably not my audience yet, but I just felt like they're going to grow to be 30, and when they're 30, then they'll, 30 and I'll be 50 or whatever, and then I don't see it going anywhere. So yeah, you end up starting to do stuff like that, and I learned major lessons. Like I definitely learned during the pandemic that I've never been great at bringing my audience with me, and it's something I need to start doing, and I think there's a lot of comedians who are like that. Like we've never nurtured our own audiences. We've always relied on promoters to nurture the audience for us. So it's just like, I'm booked here and I'm booked there and I'm booked there, and they will advertise for me, and they will push, and all I gotta do is show up and get on stage, and people are like, he's here or whatever. This pandemic happens, and you're like, oh right, there's nobody doing this for us anymore if you haven't done it. And that's why comedians who had been doing it, comedians who had understood the philosophy of bringing their audience along with them, they thrived during the pandemic, whereas comics like me learned that lesson. I just learned like, oh shit, I have done fuck all in my 20-year career to nurture. Like I'll make an album or whatever, and I sell things to people. I do that, but that's not what nurturing your audience is. And so we've learned that. So I've learned that. I learned it late in my career. It's probably a lesson I would have done well to learn 15 years ago, but here I am now.
What would you say would be some of the key elements of nurturing your audience to bring them along?
Well, just having regular contact with them, basically. So pick your poison. I would say I picked Twitch. I picked Twitch because I feel like it's going to grow over the next few years and stuff. But some people some people are good at Instagram or whatever. But pick your poison and stay in contact with your audience, and give some value back to them. Get your clips up on Instagram. Try not to monetize everything like a greedy prick. Give people free content, and let them know that you'll value them when they come out to a live show. It's basically, learning to be your own promoter in a lot of ways, which is that's true too. Cause a lot of promoters that I've worked for around the world, some of them retired during the pandemic. Some of them went because some promoters who I've already worked for 20 years. Some of them are in their 60s and 70s. Yeah. And that this pandemic made them go, okay, I'm done. I'm going to hand the club over to a young 20-something-year-old who's been asking me for it forever, and I'm out of here. And so you see that happen, and then I'm like, literally, my instincts, like there's a couple of guys who did it, who told me during the pandemic, yeah, I'm done, I'm handing it over or whatever. And it made me go, oh no, you're the reason why I was successful there. You were the promoter that believed in me and would promote me. And then when I show up, I'm successful. I don't have complete faith that the new promoter gives a shit who I am, or can give me a leg up when I'm coming to town. And that's what made you realize, oh right, we're our best promoter. We have to learn to be in contemporary comedy anyway. I say this as I know for a fact there's hundreds and hundreds of comedians over the age of 35 that are just go, no, I won't change. I show up, I do the jokes. That's all I do.
The Comedy Works was a very sort of famous landmark Montreal comedy club, and one day it just got padlocked because the owner went bankrupt. And the Comedy Works. This happened, I'm going to say in excess of 10 years ago, maybe, or over 5 years at least ago. And what happened was he refused to advertise, because he opened the club in the 80s when it was just a money-making machine. People always came down. And when the market sort of changed, he didn't.
Right.
And he did not adapt. And then he blamed that there was less parking downtown as the reason why his club failed.
Yeah. It's quite the lesson to learn, isn't it? It's hard to, like I said, I I mean, I learned it right away by being on Twitch because I arrogantly thought this is going to be a sprint. I'll pick up 1,000 followers right away. And then I quickly learned after a little while on Twitch going, oh, right. I'm not catering to the audience I already have. I'm building a new audience again. It's a new medium and I'm building a new audience. And this is not a sprint. This is going to be a marathon. And, but I think it's really important, and it's something I neglected to do for the first. You know what, and there's lots of us who are guilty of it because my buddy was over here the other day, and we were talking about how because he's in a Luc Besson film, like he's an actor who's been in lots of movies and stuff, but he said the same thing. He's like, when I said it to him, I said, yeah, we never nurtured our audience, did it? There's a lot of actors in your position, and they would have done some social media or something to always reward your viewers and stuff. And then that puts you in the eyes of a director who wants to book you more. And that's what my friend was like, yeah, I have directors that kind of like me, but they're not energized by it. And I was like, yeah, it's because we haven't brought our audiences with us. We haven't got that legion of fans who are on Twitter or, saying, you got to book Gary for this thing or whatever. So.
And also the fact that if I have this guy in my film, then this guy's going to be helping create buzz.
Yes.
Just because he's going to be talking about it, et cetera.
Yeah, you can't. The number of times you look at a movie and you're like, why is that person in there? They're not a good actor. And you're like, oh, they're not there for their acting ability. They're there because there's a huge audience coming to the movie now.
Okay, so that's at JJ Whitesnake on Instagram and on Twitch. So I do recommend that people search you out, hunt you out, make sure that they're subscribing.
Hunt me down. Come
hunt you down.
Stalk me.
What are your hopes on the future? Because I mean, where's LA? Are you looking at another lockdown coming or?
Oh, who knows? I hope not. I certainly hope not. Yeah, short-term future. I mean, I would love the Jim Jefferies show 2.0. I mean, holy fuck, if that could ever happen. But I know that everybody involved with the Jim Jefferies show has all moved on to new projects and new pastures and stuff. So I don't know. I just want you know what? I want to. I'm touring with Jim Jefferies in November. So we start touring in November. But other than that, I just want the world to. It's gonna sound like hippy dippy shit, but I just want the world to heal again, so that I can be the asshole, so that I can just be entertaining at comedy clubs again. I just want the world to come back, and so that we can I'm coming back to Canada as well in a month. I'm doing shows in Halifax and New Brunswick, and and the unfortunate thing is I'm coming home to see people I haven't seen for 2 years because we've been locked out. So I'm just crossing my fingers. I'm like, please, world, please don't go wrong, so that I can come home. I want to come home, and I want to see my mom, and I want to hug my friends, and I want to, say goodbye to people that I've lost, and then do a comedy show. So
and shout out to Ian Black on that one. He's the person who resurrected the Yuk Yuks in Halifax.
He's good shit, old Ian. I think he and I, when we were getting to know each other, we got really shit faced at his place and watched Doug Stanhope all night. We did like a Doug Stanhope marathon.
I have a Doug and Jim story for you, which I'll share off air.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Now, okay, among the many things, of course, like Trump is out. Do you think the United States is moving in the right direction? What's your?
Oh, we're going political, are we?
We're going to try to cram these last couple minutes about your thoughts on.
Can I just say no? I mean, I'm worried. I'm worried for America. I'm worried. The system's fucked here. I think anytime you have a two-party system, this is just bad. Like, at least in Canada, we can bitch and complain, but we have a 3+ party system, right? And so there's always a tiebreaker, or there's compromises have to be made. This place is fucking mental because you're either for the Habs or you're for the Maple Leafs. It's like having two teams is a political. It's just ridiculous. Could you imagine if there was only 2 sports teams in every sports league? Anyway, It makes people fucking mental. So I'm eternally worried, but I'm hoping that my life can just. I'm hoping to entertain people while the world is going to shit, I guess.
The fallout for, say, like, because you're in LA, so the the fallout of the Black Lives Matter movement? Do you think that there's actually going to be movement forward?
Oh, certainly. I think social justice wise, yes. I think there's very much. I think politically, no. Politically, America's fucked. But I have a lot of faith that America is going to improve its social specter. Social. So yes, I think a lot of good is going to come out of the 3 or 4 social movements that we've seen in the last 4 years. There should be a lot of growth out of that. But politically, fuck, man. I wish. Like, I actually got excited. I thought the Tea Party was going to be a political party. I'm like, good. They need a third. They need a fucking tiebreaker. But nah, it's just red versus blue. Are you red or are you blue? I'm like, fuck off. And now if you say that you're in the middle, if you say that you're a moderate, then they both hate you. Then you really have no friends. That gets fucking weird too. Like going to a Maple Leafs and a Canadiens game and wearing a Bruins jersey. I know. Yeah, whatever.
Keep it in Canada.
Yeah.
All right. I want to thank you very much for being part of this. And have fun at Halifax. Say hi to Ian for me.
Will do, man. Yeah, it'd be good to see him. I can't wait. New venue in Halifax. I'm told
the old Seahorse. I was told.
Right. That's amazing. I did a TV show there.
Oh, for the Halifax?
For the Halifax Comedy Festival. Yeah, many moons ago. Oh, so is that the new Yuks? Awesome. That's exciting.
I haven't taken a close look at the pictures from the inside, but I think there's a little bit of a redesign. They got rid of some of the posts.
Okay.
So, I'm looking forward to hear that is like probably the oldest bar in Halifax, I believe. Like,
definitely that strip is, yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I think so. I think that's.
And anyone who wants to support the channel, it's there's a link tree running at the bottom. It's a link tr.ee/Paul Ash.
Give him your support, everybody. Give him your support.
At JJ Whitesnake on Instagram and Twitch. Please
and
check
Twitter.
him out. Check him out when he's on tour. I forgot to ask this. Are you touring in the States much? Like without Jim, are you doing any road gigs on your own?
No, currently, no. I mean, so many comedy clubs aren't even reopened yet and stuff. So I am gigging. It's the usual process, gigging a lot here in LA. So we got a lot of work, did some great shows down in South. I mean, it's such a big place. Yeah, a lot of showcasing. And then I'm back to Canada in a month doing Halifax stuff. And then I'll be on tour with Jim, which is going to be amazing too. We do, like, he just plays the biggest. He's pretty good. He's pretty good clown. We did Madison Square Garden just before the pandemic, so that was a dream. I know it wasn't. It's really Jim Jefferies did Madison Square Garden, and I get to open for him. But still, I've been on the stage at Madison Square Garden, so it's pretty cool.
And jjwhitehouse.net. That's where people can find your touring schedule.
No, my last name is Whitehead.
Oh, what did that commit?
Well,
sorry, I guess we were talking.
It's the politics. Yeah, we talk politics, and you went straight in with White House.
I just started typing quickly without my glasses on.
No worries,
there we are. That was not intentionally passive aggressive or anything at that point.
I do the link tree. I do the link tree thing too. If you're on any of my social media, I also have the link tree link. So whatever your favorite is, except for, I don't know, Bebo or something. I don't know. I'm not on that. We're on everything else.
Thank you very much, JJ. So glad that you were here. My name is Paul Ash. This has been They Talk Funny.
Yeah, can I just say, buddy, thanks again, and thanks for having me, and thank you for doing comedy in Halifax in the 90s when nobody fucking else was doing it. Cheers, bro.